content is king. I don't believe that you can produce too much content because there's all these filters and things like that. And if you put enough out there, more people will see it. Welcome to the Matt Laricy Project. This is a show about all things real estate, business, marketing, and entrepreneurship. Each show consists of myself, Matt Laricy, a member of my team, and a guest. This week we have Catherine Holbrook.
Yes. Got
Holbrook? We were talking about how I can't say last names.
Every podcast I think we've talked about this, people are going to get sick of.
Catherine breaking the record here of appearances. So season 2, E15 is Fashion Meets Tech with Kayte Malik. Kayte Malik is the CEO and co-founder of DressCode, a notable technology startup here in Chicago. The company merges fashion and technology while educating women and girls in computer science, coding, and STEM. Prior to launching her startup, Kayte worked for several Fortune 100 companies. Since launching, Kayte was named to one of the 2018 Women to Watch in Business Disruption, and was selected for the coveted 1871 WISTEM program in downtown Chicago. Did I say that right?
Yep.
WISTEM? What's my Eastern Illinois college education kicking in here? So, man, this is like a very impressive paragraph about yourself. How did you get to like this? What's your education?
So, great question. I have an MBA and an undergrad. I value my education great. I think if I look at kind of the collective view of my education, where it started, it was public school education, but I grew up in a very small town. Not that it was small in the middle of nowhere, but it was small because it was 1 square mile. And there was no room to grow. So
was there a grocery store?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there one of everything? One grocery store?
Like one grocery store, one gas station?
Yeah, well, no, there were multiple gas stations.
Okay.
But I grew up in upstate New York in Rochester, and so if you know Rochester, there's Wegmans. So there's a Wegmans on every corner in Rochester. So there was a grocery store. There were just super suburbs around it. So with doing that, being in a small community like that, it allowed me to do a lot of things that you wouldn't do at a bigger school. And then I went on to get my undergrad at St. Bonaventure University, which is in upstate New York. It's a Division I university. Played sports.
What did you play?
Played field hockey.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
Yeah, and if you look back at my education before and being able to explore all these different things, it has allowed me to explore different things as an adult. In college, I played field hockey, but I was also the president of my class, and I started in computer science, so we'll talk about my company a little bit later. The story behind that is I was one of 2 girls in the program, and I just didn't feel like I fit in. I loved where I went to college. I continue to give back to the university today, but I just didn't find that community that I found when I was younger. So I ended up switching to business information systems, which is like the business side of computer science, and thrived there. And then 12 years later, I went to business school at the University of Notre Dame, and it was great. It was a great experience.
So what was your first job then, getting out of that?
Out of college, or my first job ever?
First job out of college,
So my first job was here in Chicago. I worked for SBC, which is now AT&T, and I did tech sales, so to small businesses.
Were you always into tech? Was this kind of like just like a passion of yours from the beginning?
From the time I was younger, tech was kind of pounded into me. My aunt was the first woman computer science professor at RIT, which is the Rochester Institute. And then she went on to be a CTO of a business at Xerox.
So you got a smart family here. They're coming from, they're pretty intellectual. So okay.
Able to call questions.
So
did you have a flip phone though? Like, did you start with that?
I
remember T9ing people back in the day.
Yeah. My mom also was an executive at Xerox, and so we would she had cell phone, like the cool little cell phones before cell phones were like little, and like I remember we got a laptop, and I got to like play on the laptop, and so I tech from just being around it and being around women in tech from a young age, and then also the just you'll make a lot of money if you're in tech like that, and like the early 90s was like you got to go into tech, tech, and this was coming from my mom and my aunt, and
well, it's kind of like what they knew and stuff like that. So you kind of like have it already kind of like ingrained in your like brain about it. So what made you want to incorporate like fashion and technology? Like where did that come from?
So it came from my 12 years of experience in corporate technology, and then it started as a class project when I was at Notre Dame. So we can talk about, I think there's another question about that later. But it was it was in early 2016 when a lot of these like Girls in Tech and Coding with Klossy and all these kind of nonprofits were popping up and really focused on girls in tech, women in tech, and there was really not a focus on women in tech. And being a hiring manager in tech, I couldn't hire men
Yeah.
or women. So,
Yeah.
and I was also working at Sears at the time in corporate strategy for apparel and accessories. So I was learning the accessories business and the apparel business. So it was like this weird amalgam of 12 years of experience in technology, looking at where the trends were going and having this passion for like innovation and fashion and merging it all together.
So how did you know that was like the right time to like start it then? Like, where did that come from? Weren't you like a little nervous at all, or?
No, I went to business school to learn
Yeah.
how to start companies,
Yeah.
and it started in an entrepreneur class.
Okay.
So,
There's an actual class just for entrepreneurship now in Notre Dame?
yeah.
Man.
There's
These colleges
actually,
are getting
They didn't
crazy.
have that at Eastern.
well,
I missed that class. Actually, I think they did.
in undergrad, and so I did the executive program here in Chicago.
Yeah.
Notre Dame has an executive MBA here, but in their full-time program, they have a specific like focus on entrepreneurship today,
Right.
and they have a whole building called the Idea Center that is focused solely on innovation and starting companies.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, what was the biggest roadblocks then you encountered when you pivoted from like kind of like the corporate world to trying to start something on your own?
Convincing my parents that I'm leaving this job, that
Yeah.
I'm making a lot of money to go
We
start
got
a
like
company.
benefits and all this stuff, and
Yeah,
like we
yeah.
just paid for all this education. What the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Like-
So that was like personally that was huge, but I think just learning everything I didn't know.
Yeah.
So one thing that's super important to the dress code story is how do you get our bracelets manufactured? So we have these bracelets.
Yeah.
They're currently made by hand here in the US, and that comes from months and years of trying to figure out how to get them mass manufactured in small batches. And you know,
Where do they do it in the U.S.?
so I have a woman in Indiana that makes them right
Nice.
now. We're actually at a point now where we're moving to mass manufacturing, and we've worked on improving our supply chain
Yeah.
and understanding, and we are having them made in China.
Yeah.
But it takes our margins way low. It's
Yeah.
going to truly change how we do business. But that was a 3-year learning process.
Did you have to go to China to like figure out the stuff? Because we work with a lot of clients that have done they're on Shark Tank and stuff like that, and they've said that they kill it in China with the manufacturing, and
Yeah.
they steal the molds, and then they have to
Right.
do a new product.
So, you know, this is pretty basic. It's stamped metal.
Right.
What is unique about us is the technology behind it.
Yeah.
That's why the U.S. doesn't want to, why it's very hard to have it manufactured here.
Yeah.
With going to China 3 or 4 years ago, yes, I would have to go to China. But with technology and how things have changed, I did this all negotiated through the internet
Nice.
and checked ratings and I probably talked to 50 vendors
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
and got also, had them send samples and
Yeah.
all of this stuff, and that's what takes the longest is building up that trust. Also, I started taking Mandarin lessons
I was
this
gonna say,
year.
can you speak Mandarin?
Ni hao, like
I barely speak English, so I'm still learning hello.
that is hello in,
Oh, okay.
in Mandarin.
I'm not
but-
hello in English. I'm still
His
working on
face
that
is
one.
like,
Yeah. We have a lot of Chinese clients.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, I'll WeChat you or use Google Translate. That's how I
Right.
get it done.
Well, in Chicago, there's actually a really good Mandarin center
Yeah.
for business
Mhm.
that is solely focused on learning Mandarin for business.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
That's
it's right
awesome.
in downtown, and it's
Very cool.
awesome.
Can you tell us a little bit about this 1871 WeStem program and what you experienced there? And what does WeStem mean for everybody else out there?
WISTEM means Women in Tech.
Okay.
It's now a nationally recognized program for high potential female tech entrepreneurs, and it's right here in Chicago. It's been mentioned in Forbes. It's been on lots of news outlets. Inc. and Entrepreneur have highlighted it. And WISTEM is, I think, at this point, 4 or 5 years old. They've gone through, I think, 12 cohorts and have educated over 100 women on how to start companies, but more so how to have those conversations with investors, how to build your pitch deck, how to pitch, how to talk to customers, how to make sure you have the right customers. And it's very influential in a number of businesses here in Chicago.
What are some like big companies that have come out of there?
So, DressCode, no.
It's number one, obviously.
Right. So I think over the last, there's like I said, over 100 companies that
Yeah.
have come out. One notable is, what is it? It's Cora. They just had gotten a lot of money from some VC firms. What
Yeah.
they do is AI focused. It would be great for you guys. What, have you heard of Cora before?
I haven't, no.
So what they do is they source, like, it's all interior design and all furniture, and they use AI to help with that experience.
So it's like augmented reality of like how you could like arrange rooms and stuff like that?
No, I think it's more on the buy side.
Oh, nice.
Like how to buy the, like, so.
That's cool.
So that's
Yeah.
one notable. I think over the last 4 years, they've helped raise over $15 million for women businesses. So
Wow.
Very cool.
there's too many to count,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
to
yeah.
speak. Yeah.
So, you know, there's a lot of females in technology in the startup field, and, you know, you've mentioned a lot about, like, kind of like the women breakdown. Like, what was your experience in school, like, getting your initial degree? Like, what was a breakdown of, like, men to women look like to you?
So when I studied computer science,
Yeah.
I was one of 2 girls.
Wow.
And I like to tell this story. This is a funny story.
How big was the class?
So St. Bonaventure has about 2,000 students.
Okay.
So I would say the computer science program maybe had 20, 25.
Okay.
Just in general.
Yeah.
Right.
Like for, actually, I don't really know.
But it's
Around your
super.
ballpark.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But it's
So
very
it's
rare. Was it very rare to see
Yeah.
women in the field then?
Oh
or-
yeah, and this was early 2000s. So yeah, and it just was very, very high. I remember and I'm very social, and I played sports, and I remember one Friday night, the computer science building was the only building that was open 24 hours a day because they expected people to be coding all the
Right.
time. And it was a Friday night, and they're like, all these guys are, they're like, Kayte, are you going to stay and make video games with us? And I'm like, I'm going to go to a party now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
be social. And so I think that's what has kind of, with technology, you see a lot of introverts or a lot
Totally.
of, so it's like being able to use your personality and
Yeah.
other ways to
That's cool.
to bring technology out. I then moved to business, and there's a lot more women in business. So
Do you think the landscape has changed a little bit since you left? Do you think it's kind of growing to be a little bit more women focused, or?
I would like to hope so. I know at Notre Dame they're at 50% parity in their computer science program for
Okay.
undergrads, which is, they've worked very, very hard to do that, and they're
Yeah.
one of the only universities in the country that is there. With St. Bonaventure, they're more focused on other degrees, so you're not really seeing a lot of these tech degrees coming. They're much more, it's a private Catholic liberal arts university, so they're focused more on business, finance, and education.
Got it.
What about like experience working in Fortune 100 companies, like as a woman? Did you see a big top heavy difference there between men and
but
women?
like I think because I played sports and it never really occurred to me until people started talking about it. I
Yeah.
just was like, oh, I'm just working, right?
Right.
As we're now more cognizant of it, yes. There's a lot of times I am the only woman in the room,
Yeah.
and I have found that that's benefited me. So
Yeah.
it helps in all aspects, from
Yeah.
negotiation to relationships, and
Absolutely.
You know, it's kind of crazy. Like in our industry, in real estate, in the residential sector, there's way more. I think it's like 60 or 70% women to men. But on the commercial side, it's like 80% men and only like 20% girls. So it's like kind of crazy that and I don't know why that is. I really
Yeah.
don't. But maybe it's because it's commercial is technically a little bit more business-like, but
Yeah.
and residential is more personal. But like
Yeah.
I don't know the
Yeah.
reason behind why people choose one over the
Right.
other.
more risk, more reward.
Yeah.
And I think for commercial you have to have a long-standing career, where some, not to stereotype, but a lot of women get in after they kind of leave corporate.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
you're not that and I think it's more being able to take those risks.
Yeah.
Guys
Yeah.
want to take more risks
Yeah.
sometimes.
What about like merging technology with traditional fields? Because in our industry, we're like a super traditional industry. I mean, we like to say we're super tech focused. Like I feel like we're more of a tech company that sells real estate in a way that like we're always like creating the new tech. Like what advice do you give to like people who are stuck in like these traditional fields that aren't thinking outside the box?
So I think in specific, what's not in my bio is I did sell real estate for about 6 years in Charlotte, North
No
Carolina.
kidding.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about traditional fields, it's really understanding the user experience
Yeah.
from both from the business and also the consumer, your clients.
Yeah.
Because you think of like, what's the MLS listing?
Yeah,
and
multiple
how-
listing system. Yeah.
I don't know how it is today, but
Yeah.
10 years ago, it was super clunky, so hard to use.
Yeah.
It's like today you hear design thinking and putting your customer in the middle or your user in the middle, and then developing tech around that. So
Got to have a good interface. I talk about it all the time. If it doesn't look sexy and it's not easy to use, that's why Apple won. Everybody can just pick it up and use it in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
My kid, he's like 10 months old. And he knows how to open up the iPhone. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like basic stuff. So, kind of pivoting. We've talked a little bit about DressCode, which is your company. How did this idea get started? Like, where did it come from?
So, kind of precursor to that, it started as a class project when I was in business school. The way that the class worked is everyone pitched an idea, and then teams formed around those ideas. And it was early January 2016, and I had done some research, and I actually was going to pitch, and I wasn't excited about it, pitch this idea of like a senior gym that was tech enabled. Because there's so many baby boomers and they don't like go, and this was the reason, and I'm like, this is boring, I don't want to do this. And like people were going around the room saying their ideas, and it just kind of clicked. I was like looking at my bracelet, thinking about open source coding and thinking about like retail and e-commerce, and it was just like, what if there was this bracelet that taught you how to code, and people got excited about it. And so I pitched it in that class. It was super raw. It was like 7 minutes old at that time.
Yeah.
And no one joined my team, so that was cool. I joined another team that was working on like some military insurance technology, and it was all men.
Yeah.
It was all ex-military. There was like a Purple Heart Marine, an Army Ranger, a Top Gun pilot, and then a guy that played college football.
Okay.
All had daughters, but had no clue what. One guy was like, "Oh, I really like what you're doing. I see what you're doing," and he's like, "I totally would have joined your team, but I'm on this team now." He's my co-founder today.
No kidding.
He was the Top Gun pilot, and by the end of that class, we had convinced our whole team to pivot from this military insurance thing that no one could put a business case around to our company. And it took us a year to develop our tech, and 2.5 years later, we've got customers in 37 states now and 4 countries. So
Very cool.
How does it serve women and young girls?
So we do that in a number of ways. The product itself this is our bracelet. If you guys want to check it out, it's got empowering messages on it in binary code, which is 1s and 0s, and they say things like, "I'm brave and I'm bold and I'm smart." You take that code to our website, type it in, and it unlocks lessons on how to code. We've got a platform right now that teaches you how to build a website all about yourself.
Cool.
There's lessons in CSS, JavaScript, and HTML.
Those are awesome.
And then we also do events and talks and try and build a community around the company as well.
So is there like other stuff you guys are trying to offer like with that stuff, like other like lessons of like how to use these things and things like that? Are you trying to do like educational programs with it?
So we do, not only do we sell our bracelets, but we also do some corporate training now where we'll go into organizations and hold lessons and teach them basic coding.
Is there any other like competitors in the space?
So there's 2 others that we kind of track. One was acquired by Intel about 18 months ago, so they've kind of like, they were, what were they, like 3D printing and AI, and they've kind of been consumed into the Intel world. Intel is doing a ton with fashion technology right now. And then there's another company out in New York that their target is a little bit younger, and they actually, their price point's a little bit higher, and they have much more technology in the bracelet than we do.
Do you think like if Intel approached you and offered you like $20 million, is this something you'd sell?
That's why we build companies, right?
Yeah.
I'm
just curious. You know what I mean? Like I'm thinking Intel's got like billions upon billions of dollars.
I think
like, they're
that
super rich.
I think that was around 12 million. The average transaction for a accessories company is, I think, like 700 million.
Okay.
So I think if we got it to a place where we could put it in a bigger arena to take it to the next level, we would really highly consider that.
Yeah.
And
would you always want to still stay involved if you did?
yes and no. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm always thinking about new
the next
things,
thing.
and so and I get bored really easily.
Yeah.
So I'm always tinkering with other stuff. So if we could do something else, that would be cool too.
Do you notice like a lot of like, you know, younger girls getting more attracted to coding over stuff because of stuff like this? Or?
I think because there's been a huge marketing push. I also think there's a lot of like psychology that plays into it.
Yeah.
Girls under the age of like 8 are careless. Like they're so independent, and when they start getting introduced more to boys or their friends, and then they kind of lose some of the confidence, and they lose that confidence in math and science and stuff.
Yeah.
And so you need to kind of catch them before 8th grade, because once they get to high school, they're like too cool for school.
Yeah.
Is math and science typically dominated by men? Has that been the? I honestly
Yeah.
don't know. Like,
I know from a computer science perspective in schools right now, 20% is women.
Okay.
That girls are typically better at math,
Yeah.
but they phase themselves out
Yeah.
because they get pulled into other things.
I feel women in general are smarter than men. We're like cavemen. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just we're not.
At least you can admit it.
I 100% agree. My wife is like the driving ship. Like, like I say stuff to her and she always corrects me. She's like, "Are you an idiot?" I'm like, "Yes, I am. You know this. Like, this isn't the first time for this."
Or Jamie proofreading all your emails.
Oh yeah. Oh my god. I have clients that like I
Yeah.
forget the apostrophes all the time.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what to spell? I'm like, no, I don't. Like, relax. So, what about like starting like having a startup like and getting involved in this? Like, how difficult has this been to launch this? Because getting a product from prototype to an actual deliverable is pretty difficult.
I think it takes some sort of crazy to
Yeah.
be able to like continue to push on something and have a vision. You always have to learn.
Yeah.
And I think probably the same in your business. It's always changing. You've always faced with new challenges, new learning, and it's just getting up every day, putting one foot in front of the other, and trying to figure out how you're going to make money.
Failing forward. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Fail
it's,
fast and
you know,
fail often.
I think the best lessons are always learned is when you fail, because then you never want to fail again. You feel terrible about it. But I think if you can be big enough to learn from your mistakes and not be like, hey, I'm the greatest, this wasn't my problem, and being like, yeah, I fucked up and like I got to change it and this is how I'm going to do it. Like that's the biggest way to get ideas and products off the ground, in my opinion. What about like where do you see DressCode going in the future? Like what do you have in mind?
Well, we're super excited about this change in our supply chain, and I think it's going to be a game changer. Our margins, we're going to be able to expand faster and take on more inventory and support the growth that we can't do right now. So having higher margins is going to allow for us to do different things. And
What do these cost like right now?
what if someone were to buy them?
Correct.
So they retail between $40 and $50
Okay.
based on kind of the metal that we use.
Sure.
We are running a promotion right now for $15 for one of our top selling bracelet,
Okay.
and we'll probably reduce costs or our sale price when we when all of our new
When
inventory.
you're up
How
to
many different
manufacturing?
bracelets do you have?
We have 9 different sayings. Exponentially, I think it's like 36 or something in different colors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We have partnerships with nonprofits, so some of our bracelets are dual branded, and a portion of those profits go back to those organizations.
Nice. So
Yeah.
already starting to give back, which is great.
Yeah.
So what can you recommend to other entrepreneur-minded people in Chicago, like
So-
launching products and stuff like this?
Just do it. There's never a right time to start a company. You have to get up and put one foot in front of the other. Do what scares you. That's something that I live by. If you're afraid to make a phone call, make it, because what's the worst that's going to happen? No one's going to pick it up. Build a community. Chicago is a great place to start a tech business. The community here is amazing. Women, from a women perspective, 30% of all startups here are run by women or started by women. In the rest of the world, it's like 18%. So we are a driving force in
Yeah.
women in technology here in
Yeah.
Chicago. I think over the last 10 years, just the community, the ecosystem has grown. Get involved, be involved, stay informed, and that's very specific to Chicago.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think like obviously we own a business that's in real estate, and it's I think it is true. It's like you just can't be afraid to fail because you're going to, and it's just it sucks, but that's just part of life. Like if everything was easy, then everybody would do it, you know.
For
So,
sure, yeah.
So we have what we call the Fast Five, where our co-host asks 5 questions. Miss Holbrook.
Sure. I have one question of my own too.
Okay.
Have you thought of going on Shark Tank?
We have gone through part of the process.
Have you?
Yeah. We were
What's the
talking.
process like?
It's crazy. And when we first started talking we didn't make it.
Yeah.
So when we first
You
started,
can still keep applying, right?
yeah, you can still keep applying.
Do that every
When
day.
you when we first got contacted, we called all the people who went through Notre Dame, because there's like the guys from Rent Like a Champion who are here in Chicago. There's a couple other Notre Dame companies that have gone through Shark. So we talked through, we learned the process
Yeah.
before we had to go through the process.
Yeah.
So There's certain ways that they'll find you. Either they know they've heard about your company, you apply, or you go to one of these like auditions,
Like
right?
casting call type thing.
We,
yeah.
we send an email, we got a call. They'll call you, they'll talk to you, you make a video, they assign a producer to you, and then there's
Like a lot of steps.
there's a lot of steps, and you don't really know where you are in the process.
Yeah.
Sometimes you talk to a producer 4 times,
Is it
sometimes
like a long process? Like you'll talk to them, then you don't hear back for a while. And
yeah,
it's like,
and
oh.
if you don't hear back, you're done. Like
Yeah.
they don't tell you you're
Yeah.
done. And then they tape like 2 or 3 times a year, like in June and September. So they're always kind of,
Yeah.
and they'll tape for like a week.
Yeah.
Right.
And then
They do like a whole season pretty much at one sit down.
Yeah.
Because those guys are hard to like kind of like lock down.
Yeah.
and the other
All
thing, what
together.
I've learned is those 10 to 15 minute vignettes are usually about 2-hour conversations.
Wow. So, who would be, if you had to pick one shark, who would you want?
So, Lori, if you're listening, because she lives here and she's tweeted about us, she would be awesome.
Okay.
Her
We've
boat's at the harbor. over
yeah,
here.
we've thought.
She has a big boat at Freedom Harbor. I didn't
Yeah.
know she lived here either. Yeah.
Yeah, she lit. Well, she
Not
went
that
to
you're stopping
Loyola. If,
Yeah.
Like not.
Yeah.
Anywho, she would be great from a product perspective.
Yeah.
We also think that Robert, who has a strong tech background,
Yeah.
because we are tech heavy, would be
Yeah.
grey, and also like Cuban would be. All of them would be great.
Yeah.
I think Damon John.
Everyone is except Mr. Wonderful.
I see. I would. Do you know what? I would want Mr. Wonderful. If the guy.
I'm just kidding.
Here, do you know why? I'm dead serious. Why I would want, if I sold a business, I talk to my wife about this all the time. Mr. Wonderful is the only guy I'd want. I wouldn't want anybody else.
Yeah.
He's only focused on becoming profitable and the numbers, and that's
Right.
it. And to be frank, like in business, you got to be. I want an asshole on my side that's gonna have the tough conversations.
Sure, yeah.
And like I get it. Like I think everybody else is probably like better. I want to hang out with, but the guy that I want ruthless in my corner. I want Mr. Wonderful. And you know what he would do? He would check me every day to be like, you didn't get your fucking numbers down. We got to be more profitable.
Keep on going,
And you
Matt.
know what?
Hold up your wrist and be back with
I would be like, you're right, man. Fuck, all right. I'll get in order. Chill out. So like, I'm just telling you, like, it's a business. So like, I don't know why more people don't choose Mr. Wonderful. Like,
Right.
I think for a business like this, remember, he started all that learning stuff, you
Right,
know?
you're right. Well,
And for kids and his background, and he could get your numbers down in China.
Right. Yeah.
I'm just throwing it out there. Mr. Wonderful would not be a bad
if
guy.
he's listening, any
Yeah.
of them.
Like, I'll
so.
take you to- All right. So what is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
So this came from my mother, and it's when I was working in the banks during the financial crisis. And she's like, just put a hard hat on, keep your head down, and do your work, and just keep going forward, because change is always going to happen, and it's how you adapt to it. And if you stay focused and you stay hardworking, you're going to prevail.
Nice.
That's great. Okay. Do you love to win or hate to lose?
I love this question. I loved reading this question. One of our values at DressCode. So I love winning. I talked about being an athlete.
Yeah.
I love sports. I love everything about competition. But losing is when you learn. We talked about this already.
Yeah.
And if you lose and you don't learn, that's bad.
Yeah.
Right.
If you lose and you learn, that's where some of the biggest winnings come from.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
like with DressCode, we have this value. We have like 12 values, and one of them is team mentality. And it's like, we win as a team, we lose as a team. Winning is great,
Yeah.
but if you lose and you learn from it, that's a good thing too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Who is your biggest hero?
Great question. This is going to sound kind of, heartfelt. I would say my family
Yeah.
have from a drive and a moral and a value perspective has been super influential. We
Yeah.
talked about my mom and my aunt. Like these were super powerful
Yeah.
women.
Yeah.
But if
Paved
you
the way a little bit,
and
yeah.
if you look at all of, it's just this. I mean, I come from a large Irish Catholic family.
Yeah.
I went
Yeah.
to Notre Dame and St. Bonaventure. It's no surprise, right? And I've got 21 first cousins, and and everyone is successful in their
Yeah.
own, and we push
Yeah.
each other, and it's great. And
Yeah.
then from like a business perspective, Martha Stewart is just a really cool
Yeah.
woman. She was an investment banker on Wall Street, was one of the only
Yeah.
women there at
Have
the
you met
time.
her ever?
I've seen her speak. I
Yeah,
haven't met
met
her.
her.
But hearing her speak, hearing her story, and it's always evolving, is just
Yeah.
super cool.
She's awesome.
Yeah.
I love Martha Stewart.
Yeah, she's great.
Did you see that she did like a cooking special with Snoop Dogg?
No, that's the thing. Like she
But
just
she
doesn't
likes to, like,
care.
keep stable,
Yeah, she's,
yeah.
yeah, she
she's
stays
awesome.
relevant.
She
you know?
spoke at Idea Week here a couple years ago and
Yeah.
was awesome.
All right, next. So if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
I think it would be to be healthy all the time and
Yeah.
not get hurt. I thought, like, as I'm getting
That's a good
older,
one, actually.
and
Actually, I don't think about that.
I did 2 triathlons this year.
Wow.
I love to run, but I'm also now starting to deal with some injury, and I'm like, this really stinks.
Yeah.
Like, I hate not being able to do
Right,
this.
right.
And so if I could heal and
Yeah.
not have to think about it, life would be so easy.
That's a Wolverine power there.
And last question, what makes you Chicago?
I think I grew up in New York, but I was born in Michigan. I think it's the idea of community and helping other people is what makes me Chicago. I love Chicago.
Yeah. So where can people find you, and what would you want to plug?
So DressCodeTech.com. It's holiday. I don't know when you're going to air it, but it's holiday season right
Yep.
now. We can be found on Instagram at DressCodeTech, on Twitter at DressCodeTech, and then if they want to tweet me, I'm at Kayte Malik, KayteMalik. That's where you can find me.
Awesome. So make sure to tune into our next episode and subscribe to our podcast. Thanks for listening to the Matt Laricy Project.
Awesome.
Make sure to subscribe to our podcast, follow us on Instagram, and like us on Facebook.